Note taking can be done during a lecture or in a self-study session. In this video, we are focused on note taking during a lecture. There are many note-taking systems out there, and I'm not going to recommend any one of those. You can see on the screen some of these systems, and the reason behind is that I think all of these have flaws and disadvantages. Some needs lectures to be well organized, and some make the note-taking process more complex than it should be. Therefore, I recommend bits and pieces from all these systems, and the other reason is that I don't want to confuse and overwhelm you with the plethora of information available on these systems. I think the note-taking process should be simple and straightforward. There are only few key things that you should understand, but once you develop a note-taking method or you follow any of these methods, you must stick to that method because that will help you the most. Now, here are my key suggestions for you for note-taking. The first is that you always use a physical notebook for taking notes during a lecture. The other option is taking notes on a note-taking app that I am going to discuss in a minute. But I like you to use a bound diary of the recent year with a single date on one page. And the date on the page will help us to link the knowledge that we acquire in different time frames. If you don't want to use the yearly planner diary, you can use a simple bound diary and you can put the page numbers yourself. One thing you should consider while buying this diary is your handwriting. If your handwriting is large, get a diary with larger line spacing. You can also use a diary with unlined pages, simple white pages, but that is normally very hard to find, in particular in yearly planner diary. And I think I should give you a second option. If you don't want to use a bound diary, you can use loose leaf papers with a clipboard. In that case, you might think about using various colors for different subjects because that would be easier for you to organize. Although I have used many note-taking apps, but the main reason I prefer physical notebook over note-taking app is that reading from a notebook is much easier for your eyes. Your eyes get less stress and strain, and you don't depend on whether or not your devices are charged. And if you still want to use a note-taking app, I would suggest use Obsidian because there are certain features of Obsidian that are useful in particular for research students. I have discussed those in a video that I will put in additional resources if the system allows me to do that. Now, the second suggestion is pay attention to the lecture. When you are taking notes, you should not just be taking notes for the sake of taking notes. You should try to understand the maximum from the lecture, what the lecturer is emphasizing on. Your listening skills are closely related to your note-taking skills, also your reading skills that we are going to discuss in the next video. So become a good listener, try to understand. When the lecturer says something is important or uses any similar words, you should pay close attention and look for some new keywords. And one way of finding these keywords is that you read the topic a day before the lecture on your textbook. Then look for some bold word, look for some titles, section titles, and try to note those before the start of the lecture. Then when lecturer is delivering the lecture, you look for those keywords and take your notes. And if you miss something important, ask your colleagues and include in your notes. Now, the next suggestion is while taking notes, write down the minimum possible words packed with information and circle the keywords. You can use the color pen to write those keywords to make them stand out. Normally it is hard to find, but if you can find, try to link the keywords that are closely associated with each other, and try to develop the concept as I mentioned earlier by listening carefully. Start a new paragraph for each new concept. And when the lecturer says something listicle 1, 2, 3 or ABC, you put this in the same manner, but again using one or two words. Now, if the lecturer draws a diagram, you might be able to draw with the lecturer, but if lecturer shows some diagram, you might not be able to draw that. In that case, just draw a rectangle on your notebook with empty space and draw the diagram later on by finding it on the book or in slides given by the lecturer. At the end of the lecture, record an audio of yourself about what you have understood from this lecture or write down a summary. So I think these tips are more than enough for you to take notes during a lecture.